Okay, it is 6 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Charles, and I am the Director of Charlotte Water, and I welcome you to the public notification meeting regarding Charlotte Water's potential request to modify its IBT certificate. And IBT stands for Interbasin Transfer. So when water is moved from one river basin to another, it is called an interbasin transfer. We call it IBT. So before I go to not switch slides too early, I would like to the next slide, I would like for the panel to introduce themselves. So starting with Ron.
So Ron Hargrove, one of the deputy directors with Charlotte Water.
Good evening. My name is Lynn McPeel. I'm the water supply planning branch supervisor, and I oversee the water supply planning programs and water quality programs in the state of North Carolina.
Good evening. My name is Rob Devlin. I am the Assistant Bureau Chief in the Bureau of Water with the Department of Health and Environmental Control, soon to be the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services.
Okay, thank you. And I called it panel, but actually each one of these individuals will be speaking this evening. So what is this meeting about? This meeting is to notify the public about our potential request to transfer more water from the Catawba River to the Rocky River. And so why are we in Florence, South Carolina? And that is because the Rocky River is a sub-basin of the Yadkin PD. And so in an effort to notify systems upstream and downstream, Charlotte-Mecklenburg is on the South Carolina line. And so Florence would be on that Yadkin River PD side of the river basin. And Rocky River is a sub-basin of that. We're also here to inform the local community about this request. Charlotte Water is not asking for permission to withdraw more water from the Catawba River. That is our water source. We feel like we have adequate allocation there. We are exploring the need to increase the amount of water we are allowed to transfer to the Rocky River Basin. So let's talk a little bit about this request. So we've done some preliminary analysis that suggests up to an additional 30 million gallons a day would be, the amount of our potential request, but that would be less than 1% of the flow that goes through the Catawba watery system on a day-to-day basis. Also, there's been some modeling that's been done, and there was a model in 2006 that was developed by Duke Energy in the FERC relicensing process. And so demand projections through 2058 were included in that model for water withdrawals. Also, local water supply plans for North Carolina and South Carolina communities were included in projections. And so future growth and potential IBT increases in several reservoirs were forecasted, including Charlotte's and that whole relicensing modeling process that was done. Charlotte's potential request, and this is again what we are looking at, is within previously modeled projections. Also, a part of this process is the Catawba, and you'll hear more about this from Ron. The Catawba Water Management Group is currently updating basin models and they're looking out through the year 2075. So this map here depicts members of the Catawba Water Management Group. Again, the Catawba River serves as our water source, And so you can see many communities in North Carolina and South Carolina are members of this management group. And again, this group will be modeling the use of the river until 2075. Okay, this graphic here really talks about the Catawba River. So if you look to your far, and that is my far left, you look at surface water and groundwater inflow into the Catawba, no, that's not 3 point, it's 3,752 million gallons a day. And then there are various uses in this Catawba basin. So you see water supply, 111.6 million gallons a day. You see industrial, you see power, 60 million gallons a day. Then you see agriculture, irrigation at 38.6 million gallons a day. And then there's natural evaporation that occurs again in the system, and that's 204 million gallons a day. And so when you look at what's really coming down the river basin, you see 3,752 going in, and then after various uses, you see the watery hydro station outflow. It's 3,338 gallons a day. Again, this really shows you, if you put in context, really how small of an amount that we think will be needed with our potential request. All right, so let's talk about our agenda this evening. We will have opening remarks by Rob Devlin, and he's with South Carolina DHEC. We will have IBT program review by Linwood Peel. He's with North Carolina DEQ. Ron Hargrove will then come up. Ron will talk about Charlotte Water specific IBT modification request. And then I'll come up and we'll do questions and answers. So Rob, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. I'll move this up a little bit. And over. Oh, I see. All right, thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Rob Devlin. I'm with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, South Carolina DHEC. And on Monday, we will become the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services, DES. I'm throwing that plug out there because we're super excited about our new organization. I'm here tonight to really talk to you guys about Charlotte Water in the beginning of this multi-phase process that they're going to do. This is a multi-year, multi-phase process. And just to let you guys know that DHEC, DES, we're charged with managing South Carolina's water resources, both from a quantity and a quality standpoint. And we're going to be very active in watching and committed to making sure that we're engaged in this whole process. We will be helping and supporting all of our work on the South Carolina side, working with both Linwood here with DEQ, North Carolina. We will also be reviewing, providing, relying on science to evaluate whether there's any adverse impacts to the water quantity and quality in South Carolina. It's very important that we both hear from the citizens and the stakeholders in this event, and that's why I really appreciate people coming out tonight, because sustainable water resource management is incredibly complex. I'm going to encourage you guys now to use South Carolina DES or soon to be DES as a place to ask our questions and get answers from. We'll be very open. Should Charlotte continue to proceed this process, it's going to be very important that us at DES work with state officials both from North Carolina and South Carolina, as well as our business communities, to ensure that businesses, farmers, industry, water supply, recreation, and all the other uses in South Carolina, both in the receiving basin as well as the losing basin, are not adversely affected in that we have our water resources in a sustainable manner for a very long time. With that, I want to let you guys know that DES has stood up a website with the IBT. Some of it links back to North Carolina, some of it links back to Charlotte, and some of it is some of our own information. And there on that website, you will find some web addresses to talk to get a hold of the folks at DES in case anybody has any questions. And also, Charlotte has a fairly robust system for taking comments and things. We have some dialogue back and forth between both organizations, between Charlotte and North Carolina. So we're hearing the information that they are getting. So with that, I want to appreciate everybody for showing up, and I'll be around if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Lyndon Peel, and as I said, I'm the supervisor for the water supply planning programs in North Carolina, and have Ms. Charles conveyed that I'll be giving an IBT program overview to kind of convey the message of IBT and how it works in the state of North Carolina. Jump right into it, and this is kind of a brief outline. I'm going to give update over the overview and start with the definition and the purpose of IBT in North Carolina, and talk about statutory requirements, the law itself, and the IBT process, and what the Environmental Management Commission, who's the governing body that oversees DEQ, and their decision considerations. The definition, I guess the layman definition of interbasin transfer is the withdrawal of surface water, not groundwater, just only surface water from one river basin and discharge of all or any parts of it into a different river basin. And that's both major and minor basins. And the reason I said that, I'm going to show you a basin map a bit later and give you an idea of the actual statutory boundaries and the map that was established by North Carolina General Assembly. And the second is the purpose of interbasin transfer. With the wisdom of our legislature, they wanted to make sure it's good public policy to move water from one river basin to another. And the program now started in 1993, so it's approaching 34 years old. And in that time, the General Assembly has made 22 different changes in those time, and we only have 9 certificates in the state of North Carolina. And I'll get into that a bit more, just to give you a reference of how controversial, but at the same time, how little this happened in North Carolina. The statutory threshold, the General Assembly established 3 ways to get the basic IBT. The first one, if any water system or water user in North Carolina transfer 2 million gallons of water any given day and exceed the max date of any one time in that year, 3 million gallons are required to have one before you initiate that transfer. So of course, in North Carolina, we have a lot of systems built on ridge lines and they're transferring water, but they have to get a certificate before they reach the 2 million gallons average day threshold or one peak day of 3 million. The second is increase the amount of existing transfer. They're already doing it pre-1993 when the statute was put in place, 25%. They have to get a certificate at the time. So far, we haven't had anyone to do that. And the third is increase existing transfer of water from one river basin to another, and that's the modification which Charlotte is following at this time. And to kind of give you an idea of interbasin transfer, there's many different ways, but this is I guess, an easy way, or I would say more cartoonish way I've heard of how to explain interbasin transfer. Some systems, as I said, there's many systems that were built on high ground on the ridge line. In this first example, example A, is a town that's split between the 2 river basins, source basin and receiving basin. And as you can see it in the green, that's the service area. In other words, that's the area that the system served customers. And in some cases, in this particular case, you'll see they're pulling 10 MGD from the source basin. In this case, this would be the Catawba, and they're transferring to the receiving, which would be the Rocky. In this case, the consumption can happen through septic systems, it could irrigation, however. And you'll see they're taking 10, keeping 2 in the source basins, 3 in consumption, we send 5 over. That's an interbasin transfer amount of 8. Give you another example, B, and this is 2 very simple examples. In North Carolina, we have a lot of different examples where some systems are in 3 different basins. So in the second one, they're withdrawing 10, but the town is consuming through how they're doing it, through septic, manufacturing, whatever, and sending back 5, and this is 5. It just give you an example of how it works. And it's the net transfer, not the gross. It's not 10 that they withdraw, but how much goes back, stays in. So they're looking at the net, not the gross. I mentioned earlier the river basin map, which is this river basin map. It generally follows the hydrologic unit code established by USGS, but this was drawn by the North Carolina legislatures in 1993, and it mostly followed the hydrologic codes 8 or HUC 8 is what we go about. But some areas in the coastal is more drawn for boundaries by the legislature itself. But we have 18 major basins, but within that same color scheme, you'll see, for instance, in the Catawba, the green, and the Yakima, yellow, the major basin. So regardless of the major basin and sub-basin, you still have to get a basin transfer certificate. So I just wanted to point it out. It's either 18 major and 33 sub-basins. Next, I want to give you a scale of the North Carolina transfers. Surface water transfer, we have out of 554 systems, we have 130 that transfer surface water of some amount, some very small amount within the thousands, and some much higher. 80% of them is less than, of the 130, 80% is less than 1 million gallons a day. In North Carolina, out of 554 systems, and the request that we've had, we only have 9 IBT certificates. And the next slide, I'll talk about those a little bit. But we have 1 previous IBT who got a certificate and now making a modification. So in the process now, this is the second one who requested a modification in the state of North Carolina. And of course, there's the term here, grandfather allowance or pre-existing allowance for systems that transfer over 2 million gallons prior to 1993. So in other words, we have several systems in North Carolina who their infrastructure is built on ridge lines, and they have huge grandfathers amount of pre-existing amounts. And also we have about 7 systems currently between 1 and 2 million gallons that we're monitoring, because when they get 80% of the 2 MGD, they have to have a plan, and 90% they have to have a plan put in place before they go over 2 million gallons. And we monitor them. All the systems, because systems are required to do local rough plans every year, and we have to be approved by our staff. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time because a lot of detail, but I did want to show the 9 systems that have IBTs. And the first one, Piedmont Triad, you might, it's random dam there. Greensboro is the biggest player there, but that was done actually before the statute, the General Assembly, not earmarked, but allowed them to do it before the statute actually came into place. And that's 30.5 MGD from the Deep River to the Hall in the Yakima, because Greensboro gets it in Hall and High Point puts it in the Yakima, discharging the Yakima. Charlotte got theirs in 2002. And the process is that by the time they get 80% of that 33, they have to do something. And that's what they're doing. They're following the process, the statute, to request and go through the process to show the demand, purpose and need of the project, and move forward with that. So they get it from the Catawba and discharge it to the Rocky River as their system grows into the Rocky River. And the city of Concord, Kannapolis, in 2007, that's the one that had a lot of controversy at the time. They get water go from the Catawba and Yakima, discharge in the Rocky, bring their utilities. And one of the things that over time, I mentioned about since 1993, they had 22 legislative changes. And it was because certain things during 2000, if you can remember, North Carolina, the Central Coast Plain area had huge groundwater drawdowns. And to help system get off groundwater water to surface water, General Assembly gave variance to areas in the Central Coast Plain. Green Utilities combined with like 11 of those systems to provide water. And they gave them a variance, and they have to get an IBT, but it's less stringent than the other. Brunswick County Coastal had the same type of variance. Then Town of Cary Apex, their original IBT was before 2015, but 2015 is when they got their modification, and it's 31 from the hall, and it goes to the new syndicate here. And Kerr Lake, they had a modification there because it's a core project. And recently, the Union County, 27, I said recently, 2017, when Union County got their 23 inch yak and sent it to Rocky. And Pender County went through the coastal as well as like Brunswick County to do very similar. And now I want to talk about the IBT process itself. And Charlotte Board is going to be required to go through which is one of the 22 changes in the statute since it was put in. And that particular process didn't require applicants to have public meetings, but since they're from North Carolina, South Carolina settlement, they're going provided that information here. And so we're in phase one, and phase one tend to take, I want people to know, understand, that's the biggest and longest phase because they have to come up with environmental documentation, and it goes to iterations to make sure it includes all the comments that we get and agencies, comments, and so forth. So it's an iteration process to get an environmental document. We can come up with an environmental document, take to the Environmental Management Commission. And I want to make it clear that the Environmental Management Commission makes the decision, not DEQ, to issue a certificate. But then once that's adequate, we work with them, and once we comes over to adequate, they're going to do a record of decision. And if it was an EA, it would be a FONS, but in this case, it's an EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, and it's going to be a record of decision. Then the EMC will go through the public hearing process, and then they will issue facts and conclusion based on the law. And as I go through, I want people to make comments. There's 9 factors that people really should cater their comments. So the Environmental Management Commission members, the 15 body members, can actually use the comments to come up with a conclusion to do so. And then, of course, they do their final determination. And I jumped ahead a little bit, but the EMC can grant petitions in whole and part, but flat out deny it. Most times they make required mitigation measures to minimize detrimental effects if there's any. In making their decisions, as I said, these are 9 factors that you should really consider because that's what they have to put in their findings of facts. Is it necessary? Is it reasonable? And it's the purpose, uses of transferring that water. That's good public policy. That's why you need to have a good purpose and need statement in the environmental impact statement. Second, the present reasonable foreseeable detrimental effect. Is it going to affect the soil space? How will it affect? Can it be mitigated? And then cumulative effects of source major basin, consumption. Look at all the local water supply plans and ensure that the local water supply plan that Charlotte sends in every year, are there the demands and the water use, is it going along the same as the environmental impact statement, the documentation? And then also present a reasonable detriment to the receiving basin. Is it affecting the receiving basin by taking water over there? So if your comments can fall within this and the availability of reasonable alternatives, in that EIS, they're going to look at all different alternatives and see how is this the best alternative? Look at the effects of that. And then the use of impounded storage. In this case, it's applicable because they're using their own water supply sources and they're impounded, their reservoirs. Then if the number 7 is for the 4 core lakes, and of course, Charlotte's not a core lake, but that's a part of the statute. If it's that, or if it's a running river, that could have more concerns as well. And whether the service area or applicants is within both the source and receiving basin, in which case of Charlotte, their boundary is in both the Catawba and Rocky River Basin. And then any other facts or circumstances reasonably necessary, that's a catch-all for the EMC. If they feel something is missing and someone comment or explain something is missing and falls within the findings of facts, then they would consider that as well. And my last slide is kind of the conditions and limitations on IBT certificate. And all that, the 9 certificates that we have at different levels, they have to submit to the division, which is our group, and we review water conservation plan. How does water be used? Efficiency, water efficiency, what type of efficiency they're using within that system. Are they using the best technology, the best water meters, the best everything. But then drought management plan, they already have to required to do local response plan, water efficiency plan, and a water shortage response plan. But a drought plan is when there's a drought in the basin, how are they going to operate during that time to protect both basins, the source and the receiving basins. And compliance and monitoring, quarterly monitoring, we're going to follow that process and make sure they're trending. If they ask for 20, how are they going to use it, and are they trending to use whatever they're asking for? And the EMC always have the ability to reopen, amend, and modify if necessary. For instance, if they ask for 20 or 10, whatever, and they're not using it, they can reopen it and reduce it. And of course, and this is what we get a lot of calls from, you can't sell to other water systems to make money on this. They have to be a part of the certificate. And like I said, EMC, Environmental Management Commission, they impose additional conditions as necessary, based on that. And thank you, Angie, for allowing me to give everyone an updated process.
I can't bend over that long. Okay. Thanks, Linwood. Again, my name is Ron Hargrove. I'm one of the deputy directors at Charlotte Water. All the treatment facilities, maintenance facilities, all are under my responsibility. And thank you for being here tonight, for coming out and hearing our information and your attendance. I plan to give you this kind of outline, a little bit about Charlotte Water, cover a little bit more about what's an IBT, why we need one now, or need one in the near future, rather. What's the process and schedule, what alternatives we've looked at a very preliminary concept level to determine if we needed to start this process. And then Angela will come back up and handle the last 2 items on the agenda. But about Charlotte Water, I'm sure everybody knows kind of where Charlotte is, right on the state line, Mecklenburg County. The map there on the right kind of gives you the county borders, and the area that's highlighted in blue and green are the areas in the county that are in the Rocky River. About 30% of the county is over the ridge on the eastern side in the Rocky River Basin. We serve communities, both all the towns, as well as the city of Charlotte and the county in Mecklenburg County. We have connections to existing wholesale customers in just about every county surrounding us, including your counties in South Carolina. We're a large public water and sewer utility, the largest in North Carolina, likely South Carolina too, serving a population of a little over 1.1 million. As Linwood indicated, we got our initial IBT certification in 2002. The requirements are for folks making the request to look out 30 years. During that 30-year forecast, we needed to have an IBT that would reach up to 33 million gallons a day. And that's on a peak day basis. Peak day means the single day during the year that you have the most transfer from the Catawba to the Rocky River in our case. And so that's how we're measured. We look at all of our meter data throughout the year, and we pick up that one single day that the meters in the Rocky River totaled up to a number. And that's what's reported to the state on a quarterly basis now. I'll show you some trend charts here soon, but we got to that 80% mark that Linwood talked about here recently. And so now we're embarking on what happens in the next 30 years. And so we have to do that before the limit is exceeded. And so we're in that planning phase right now. We are a long-term partner with the Catawba Water Management Group. We were one of the founding members. That group kind of bands together, provides resources to study, to model the Catawba Wateree River, to determine what its safe yield is and how it can be a sustainable source for all the uses for the foreseeable future. We also are a party and partner with the Yadkin PD Water Management Group. We helped get that group formed back in the mid-2015, 2016 range, and are still a party to that water management group. And that group is studying and modeling the Yadkin PD River to determine water availability and sustainability for the future. We also are members of local and regional drought planning. To be a member of the Catawba Wateree, you have to be a member of their drought monitoring advisory group, which instills low inflow protocols, basically calls for conservation should triggers be tripped along the way due to low reservoir elevation or water levels, drought conditions, low groundwater flows, those kinds of things. No matter where it is in the basin, if it's in the watery area and there's a drought condition that triggers, all the members of the Catawba Wateree Water Management Group go into conservation. The same happens for the folks up in Lake James, the headwaters of the Catawba. What is an IBT? Again, same pictorial, but using Charlotte's numbers. We currently withdraw on a daily basis, these are all averages, 117 million gallons to serve our community, whether it be in the Catawba or the Yadkin, the Rocky River in this case. Some of that water is consumed in the Catawba, 22 million, and then most of it's returned back through our wastewater treatment facilities, our water resource recovery facilities is what we're calling them these days. And most of that water is returned back to the Catawba. Some of that water does get consumed in the Rocky River Basin, and the remainder of that gets discharged into the Rocky River Basin. And so that's the amount, and that's the area that we're focused on with this modification request. This were the 33 peak day, the water that's either consumed as a consumptive loss or discharged and doesn't come back to the Catawba is the area that we're focusing on with this modification request. How does it happen? It happens through our utility system. We have folks that think that there's a big pipe from the Catawba that pipes it to the Yadkin River or to the Rocky River directly. It doesn't happen that way. It happens through our utility system. We draw out of the Catawba River. We pump it out to our treatment facilities where it's treated into potable drinking water. It's provided to our customers. They use it for their purposes, however that may be, whether it's making products or just residential domestic sources, or to cool big box buildings through cooling towers. And then that water is collected and it's treated in one of our 5 wastewater treatment plants. It's treated to very good quality standards. We win awards for our treatment facilities as far as their effluent quality. And that water ultimately gets discharged back to the streams, either leading to the Catawba, and in one case it leads to the Rocky River. Here's a little more information about where that occurs in our system. The blue dots you see along the western side of Mecklenburg County, Lake Norman, Mountain Island Lake, are where we have intakes into those reservoirs. That's where we get our source water from. The blue squares are our 3 water treatment facilities where we treat the water into drinking water. We then distribute it throughout the county. Some of that water crosses that ridge line into those smaller subbasins. All of those are in that Rocky River major subbasin of the Yadkin PD River. And that water gets consumed. It gets treated at our Mallard Creek facility, the orange kind of dot on the eastern side of the county, and it's discharged into Mallard Creek, which flows into the Rocky River. The remainder that gets collected through our wastewater treatment system, our collection system, gets conveyed to the Rocky River Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant. We have a partnership with the Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County, who treats up to 9 million gallons a day of flow for Charlotte. Because of pumping it back across is hugely expensive. And so you want wastewater to flow by gravity to where it can be treated ultimately. Why do we need a modification now? This is trend charts on those peak days. The blue line is our peak days since 2005. The red dashed line is that 33 million gallon a day certification amount that we currently have and have had since 2002. And you can see here over the last few years, 22 was our highest year on record. We hit 28 million on a peak day. 23, it came down a little bit to 26 million on that peak day, but we exceeded that 80%. So that kicked us into gear, into planning and looking out and forecasting for the next 30 years about where projections might go. And so that's what you see past 2023 are those projections on peak days about how much transfer could occur if growth and trends develop kind of as they have so far. The gray lines are an average day. So an average typical day in Charlotte is what happens from a transfer standpoint. So we typically are around the 20 million gallon a day mark, but on those very hot summer peak days where there's irrigation going on, extra water usage for cooling towers, there's more consumptive loss in the system. The schedule, the thing that we're trying to point out to folks is that we are very early in this process. It's all preliminary. We are really at step 2 of at least 12, if not more steps that are required along the way. We did a notice of intent. We told the state and other stakeholders that, hey, we intend to go through this process and develop it and determine if we really need to make an official request. And so currently we're at the public meeting and comment phase. And this is the 5th meeting of 7 that we plan to have. And that we're going to have all these public meetings by the end of July, and then we'll have a 30-day comment period beyond that to where we receive any additional comments from the public through our website. We have chosen to have a voluntary but a stakeholder engagement process. We want to identify key interests to help us determine alternatives to be considered in our environmental documentation and our study work, so that we can make sure that we're searching for all the alternatives than just making an increased request for a water transfer. So we're looking for folks that can help us through that process, find those alternatives that make sense, that are actionable, that we can react to and study and see if they mitigate the IBT request completely, or if they reduce the volume that we may need over the 30 years, things like that. It then goes into a process of developing that environmental document that ultimately gets turned over to folks like Linwood and DEQ to develop the environmental impact statement, who will then share that and their findings with the EMC. The last bullet in that middle box range of steps is where Charlotte would make its official request to the EMC for any transfer of volume. And then it's totally in the EMC process, determination of their findings, holding a public hearing, and then issuing their final conclusion. This is a straw man schedule. The only known dates are those first 2 dots where we issued the notice of intent and then started holding public meetings. We do plan to have stakeholder engagement workshops this fall, and they may take us into 25. We're not sure. It depends on the stakeholder process itself and how those alternatives are being developed and decision-making about those alternatives. And then it goes into the environmental document development phase, which we believe will take at least 18 months, if not longer. Once it gets to a draft EIS sent to North Carolina Division of Environmental Quality, we are asking as an extra step for the EMC to consider it and to consider its adequacy. You know, we don't want to get so far down the road that somebody's questioning the environmental document and their facts and their findings of facts. And so we're asking the EMC to hold that public hearing, take comments from the public, and determine if it's adequate for them to make their decision. If they do choose to do that and determine it's adequate, that's when we would submit our IBT modification official request to the EMC, and then it would go into their public hearing process and their determination process. So again, we think this is, you know, a very optimistic schedule. We know there will be bumps along the way, rocks in the road that will have to be mitigated somehow. But this just kind of paints the picture of how the public process is involved in the schedule. And these circles are where the public input occurs. Tonight's meeting is an example. Our stakeholder workshops with the stakeholders. If the public's not necessarily a stakeholder, they will still be able to witness the workshops through live streaming and then showing up at public hearings when it gets to the EMC process. We were required to notify folks about this, and we wanted to notify folks anyway. North Carolina requires you to at least through an official request notify upstream stakeholders, downstream stakeholders in the source basin, and at least one meeting in the receiving basin. We're doing 7 meetings. We're going to do 2 above the withdrawal point in the source basin. We did a meeting in Camden on Tuesday. So downstream in the receiving or in the source basin, we're going to do a meeting in Rock Hill, which will be downstream, and then we're doing the 2 tonight's meeting. We did a meeting in Albemarle in the receiving basin. All the counties in blue were notified through emails and letters to local governments, to the public water supply systems, to IBT certificate holders, folks notified with folks like public works and utility directors, the clerks for the county and city governments in those locations. And we also notified folks that were parties to the North Carolina, South Carolina settlement agreement notification list. We notified folks with NGOs, nonprofits, COGS, the tribal governments, industries that had intakes along the Catawba River. So what alternatives are being considered? The few that we've looked at so far are things like, how do we pump wastewater back across the county to be treated in one of the 4 wastewater treatment plants in the Catawba Basin. We looked at water reuse options. Water reuse is where you take effluent and you treat it to a higher standard that can be used for non-potable uses like irrigation, cooling tower uses, those kinds of things. We do have a couple of customers that receive reused water in the Charlotte system from our Mallard plant that's in the transfer area currently. How could we expand that to avoid more potable uses for those consumptive loss things like irrigation, cooling tower? We looked at, it's kind of like the Union County example, could we develop a new water source from the Yadkin and pipe that across into the Rocky River Basin? It would also be an IBT to do that as well. And then obviously we looked at what would it take to increase our current certification through modification. The things that have to be considered, and these are not intended to be a catch-all, this is all we're going to look at. That's why we're asking the stakeholders to engage with us to help us identify all the other options that could be studied to mitigate the request. But the things that have to be considered are capital costs, what's the schedule, O&M costs, or what are benefits versus risk, environmental factors and considerations. Can it be constructed? You know, one of the things that's not on the list is, could we make drinking water out of effluent and use that to provide potable water in the Rocky River from our wastewater treatment facility? That's not permissible in North Carolina. But we've looked at preliminarily little things like that, it's not actionable, at least currently with the state statutes. We are looking for actionable alternatives that we can consider, and that will be further refined through the EIS process. And then I'll turn it back over to Angela to carry us to the end. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Ron. You're quite a bit tall. Okay, so how can someone comment and participate further in this process? Number one, attend a public meeting, which is what you all are doing today. And again, we thank you for taking the time out to attend and to listen to what we've had to present today. Charlotte Water, IBT.org. That is a website that we stood up, and it is like a repository. So for example, there will be a recounting and video of this meeting that will be posted on, because this is being recorded by Microsoft Teams right now. That'll be on that website. You can look at other meetings that we've had, all questions, all comments. That is the place. It is very, very public because we want to be transparent in this effort. And so to do that, we've stood up this website. It is charlottewateribt.org. This presentation is on this website, the presentation that we've made today, and other documents that we have produced in conjunction with this effort is on charlottewateribt.org. We also have someone monitoring IBT project at charlottenc.gov. So if anyone has any comments, any questions, a request to maybe have more engagement, more stakeholder engagement, if there's just anything that you want to get across to the team, IBT project at charlottenc.gov is an email address that is being monitored by staff. And so also what we're doing is that questions and comments that are emailed to this site will then be posted on charlottewateribt.org. There are also a couple other opportunities to actually comment on our potential requests. A person can comment on the draft EIS during the public hearing for determination of the adequacy by the Environmental Management Commission. So as Linwood stated earlier, the Environmental Management Commission will be, that's the body that will be making the decision, and a person can actually comment on the draft EIS. Also, there's another opportunity. You can comment during the Environmental Management Commission hearing on the draft IBT determination. So after the environmental impact study has been deemed adequate, there's still another opportunity to comment on the draft IBT determination. And then, as I mentioned before, and Ron's also mentioned, stakeholder engagement workshops. And so we are going to have some of those this fall. So what is the goal there? These are in-depth workshops that we will be having this fall. We want to have meaningful engagement with groups that have a special interest into this process, and to help identify actionable alternatives. And all of this will then be input into the scope of the EIS. And so we are looking for stakeholders to represent key and diverse interests. And again, well, why participate? Why be a stakeholder? That you will have the ability to help us shape alternatives that will be considered in this process. And again, we're looking to kick those off in the fall of 2024. And there will be multiple stakeholders, and an outside facilitator will be conducting those for this process. And then all along, there'll be public outreach. As Ron stated, the stakeholder engagement workshops will also be viewed live as they are occurring. So just like this meeting, we have 4 or 5 people who are listening to us virtually. We plan to conduct the workshops the same way, where you don't have to drive to Charlotte or drive to another location. You can attend virtually and listen as we go through this process. So public meetings, again, I would say that's another way we're having public notification meetings. And this is meeting number 5. And we have 2 more. We have one in Hickory, Morganton area, and that is July the 15th. And then there will be one more, and it's, we're looking now at the last week in July. We're trying to firm up the location, and that one will be in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Okay, so now we can have questions and comments. I will just end with saying throughout this process so far, Charlotte Water has exceeded statutory requirements. Again, we're having many meetings in South Carolina and also North Carolina to, live up and keep up with the intent of the North Carolina-South Carolina agreement. There's been modeling with users in the Catawba River in North Carolina and South Carolina going back to 2006. And we have participated in those processes along with other utilities in North and South Carolina. We are part of basin, what I'm going to call basin management groups, the Catawba River Water Management Group that Ron has mentioned, and the Yadkin PD group. And so we are active participants in managing and using beneficially resources in both river bodies. And last but not least, we are collaborative, and we want this to be a collaborative process. When you look at the North Carolina, South Carolina agreement, it speaks to collaboration. Rob talked about collaboration, Linwood, Ron, we all have talked about collaboration between North Carolina and South Carolina. So I will end with that, and we will take questions or comments.
My name is Lynn Conte, and I'm from Camden, South Carolina in Kershaw County. And I'm here to express concerns about the modification of Charlotte Water, sending water to another area. I have a home in the city of Camden utility area near Wateree River and a farm served by Cassett Water Company that gets water from the city of Camden. Our city gets water from Lake Wateree. Lugoff Elgin Water Authority gets their water from Lake Wateree. And Cassett Water in Kershaw County purchases some water from Camden. In total, this serves a community of over 65,000 people and growing. This is a necessity, a natural resource that we depend on and can't live without. As our community expands, we are already concerned about the infrastructure needed and the impact this water transfer may have on our community. This is like the expression, robbing Peter to pay Paul, meaning you're taking a community resource and redirecting it to another community. History has shown this is not a wise decision for humans, wildlife, and ecological systems. Shortchanging one community for another has a high cost for all. So my first question for everybody on the panel up front is, how many of you been on Lake Wateree? Have any of you been on Lake Wateree? Great. How many of you been on the Wateree River? Okay, great. I'm here representing several people in Kershaw County, one of which is 3 generations on the Wateree River, another that lives on Lake Wateree. Our first question is, the Charlotte Water meeting was held on the primary day in Kershaw County. It is also held on the same night as the city council meeting and the county council meeting, and all our leadership was not able to attend. This is very concerning for me because these are the people who will question anything that will impact our community. So my first request is for you to come back to Camden and Kershaw County and hold another meeting when our leadership can ask very important questions. Elected officials must be able to answer to our community, and they're not unable to do so because they were otherwise engaged in meeting. Water scarcity affects 40% of the population around the world and impact 5 billion people by 2050. That means it will affect my community as well. I am aware Charlotte is growing, but so is Kershaw County. We are one of the fastest growing counties in South Carolina, and South Carolina is the fastest growing state. So please take in mind that when you draw water from one community and give it to another, you are hurting another community in the process. My second question is, what guidance is in place for this transfer modification to prevent causing shortages for the rest of us downstream? And I'm not just talking about Kershaw County, I'm talking about those below us. My third question is, why hasn't substantial alternative water solutions been addressed first? Our residents and wildlife down the river depend on responsible decisions and not quick, easy decisions that have already been made in the past. The main issue here has already occurred with similar problems, meaning we've already had release of alien invasive species in our reservoir systems. Sediment shifts disrupt fish spawning, migration patterns, and impact water quality, chemistry, and environmental growth. You see, when there is less water flow, more sediment builds up, creating new hazards, while other systems will have more flow, moving down additional sediment paths. It is important that the Charlotte Water System Authority not try to play God in this case. The U.S. Clean Water Act is designed to protect communities and the environment from harmful pollutants in the waterways, all waterways. My fourth question, how will you prevent disruption of fish spawning migration patterns? Already, people in Lake Wateree and Wateree River are afraid to eat the fish because of an alert in our area, in the river area. Recently, one decision to attack algae plumes was introducing sterile carp into the area. However, these poor fish have gotten trapped in the small amount of water that is flowing now, the limited water flow. And there is already new algae building up in the river due to low flow that has never occurred in the past. Don't create additional problems by trying to resolve a problem that could have alternative solutions. Don't go with a quick fix. Let's plan for the long haul. Sustainable solutions. Who is actually studying the impact downstream and looking out for the people and wildlife not receiving water? Will it be an unbiased source? Is the South Carolina Environmental Management Commission going to study the impact? Or is this Mr. Devlin that's going to be looking out for us? Who is looking out for South Carolina? Question 6. Do you recognize this canon will lead to a lawsuit from all people who currently live on the lake, river, and receiving water for this Catawba water basin? Finally, we need this water along with all the people down the river from Kershaw County. Don't take from others. This is not protecting the environment, it's stealing the necessity from multiple communities. And stealing necessary natural resources can be a crime. So my biggest question is who owns the water? Who owns the water in the river? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And can we have a copy of what you read? If you wouldn't mind submitting that. What we are doing is, as a part of the record, we are keeping comments that are written and comments that are read, and they will also be posted on the charlottewater.ibt.org site. So if someone could get a picture, if you wouldn't mind sharing it, we would like to have. Would the panelists like to comment on any of the points at this? Okay, then we.
Good evening again. Your questions, I tried to jot them down as fast as I could, but your overall question, I think I can address that, is to me, the hierarchy, if I had to prioritize this, what is in place to prevent effects on you watering? North Carolina, anyone else could contest this, but North Carolina has the most stringent interbasin transfer law in the United States. And one of the reasons we don't have a water permitting process, our legislature has not implemented one as of yet. So our interbasin transfer law was established in '93, and as I said, it's been changed 22 times. And the General Assembly said that they want this process to be ensure that it's good public policy. And of course, we have 9, and 4 of those have been challenged in court. So that's in place to ensure that environmental documentation shows that it's that there is not detrimental effect to either the source and the receiving basin. And this process, we've had the fastest one we've ever had to go through was the one they had, I guess, variances. The General Assembly helped push them through. Was 2 to 3 years. Most of them is between 5 and 7 years. So that process in itself, and I can get into all the details of what comes in there, but they have to do modeling, they have to do water quality, looks, checks, water quality, everything. So to me, that's the overall thing. This process, done the way it has in the past, looks at how it's going to affect, and it can't be a detrimental effect. And there is mitigation if it is. So to me, all of the questions you had kind of the same thing. You mentioned about water quality, the algae in the river, and I don't want to digress too much, but our General Assembly, just one of the 13 programs that I oversee, they want our group to treat algae through using herbicides, algicides, and all that, which we're trying to fight. But the General Assembly knows best, so we're going to have to do that. So I don't, we'll get back on path. And looking at the impacts on wildlife and all that, ecological flow and all that. This process is a part of the environmental impact statement, the whole environmental review. So I'm trying to stay high level, not get into all the details, but that's what this process is supposed to do. And I'm just trying to say the General Assembly is really in tune with this because we don't have a water withdrawal permit. Yes, correct. And Charlotte Water is a North Carolina system, but we're working together. This whole modeling includes both the North Carolina and South Carolina, both the Catawba Water and the Yadkin PD. Yes. I hope I answered your question.
And Ron, I think it's going to address, okay, Ron, okay, and then Ron can come up, talk about modeling.
Well, I'll first just going to address it. That Rob definitely will not be making any decisions. I will be a big part of the decisions. I've been working in the water management programs for over 25 years. I have a lot of experience, but I have got a lot of people who work with me, and that includes my staff as well as the new staff coming over from the Department of Natural Resources in their hydrology water planning group. But more than that, we have a very a big group. We work collaboratively with the Catawba Water Management Group. We are members of that, along with the DNR folks that come in there. We model with them. We review their models. We're on their modeling panels. And this is a large group of very good scientists from all over the place, not just state, but also NGOs as well as federal agencies that work on that as well. To let you know and to make it feel better, we work across all boundaries with the groups in North Carolina in that Catawba Water Management Group. We're looking at Catawba as a big unit, not as North Carolina, not as South Carolina, but as the whole entire river. So we're going up the river, down all the way to Santee. So that's the model. South Carolina also has a water planning and a state water planning activities going on today. We are actively working on the Catawba Water Management Plan, and I highly encourage you, as I did the other night in Camden, for you guys to be involved in that. And when we start having, so that plan, draft plan should be coming out in the next month or two, and I can get some dates on you. And I've got the Facebook for the Lake Water Group, and I promised them that we will let them know when these drafts are coming out, so you can see all the work that's being done in your Interbasin by multiple groups. So I'm just trying to let you feel like it's not going to be one or two people looking at this. This is a very large collaborative effort across many groups. Yes. And I would have to look to find out who's on that Catawba Water Management group, and there are some people up and down on both sides. And I'd also have to look to see who's on the Catawba Water Planning group. Joe, do you know if there's anybody on any of the water suppliers or anybody?
Up and down South Carolina, so.
Okay, but we get back to you. Yes.
That you include somebody from Kershaw County?
Well, DNR is in charge of that planning, and they put together a panel to work on the water plan itself, which is what's going to come out and have the citizen and other advisory groups to be able to take a look at it and critique what it does and how it is. So the public comment period or the citizen groups will be involved in the second phase. So it was 20-ish people who were stakeholders and water users, and from all 7 different sectors: business, industry, farming, natural resources. So a number of different groups. And I can get you a website after tonight and let you know where these are, what you can see. Yes. That'd be a question for Charlotte also.
First, thank you for your thoughtful comments. We appreciate that. Wish everybody was organized and could provide us comments like that. You know, I'm going to defer to the director of coming to Kershaw County Council. We're from my perspective, we're open to present anybody that's willing to listen, because that's what we're asking folks to do, is to listen and give us thoughtful feedback like that. Who wants the water? Everybody does. It's the people's water in North and South Carolina. I mean, that's our approach. That's what folks in the Catawba Water Management Group would tell you too. There's no single entity that owns it. So we got to protect it. We got to be good stewards of it. What we feel like we do in Charlotte, to be good stewards of the resources that pass by our intakes every day. And I know the folks in Camden and Lugoff Elgin, they subscribe to that too. They're members of the Water Management Group. So we are a party to that. I'm going to go back to the beginning real quick and show you. Sorry. That's the members of the Water Management Group. Lugoff, Elgin, and Camden are members of that. I think on the Catawba, the PPAC, the Water Planning Group, there was Fred Castles from Chester Metropolitan District, I believe, involved on the Catawba side, as well as Jeff Lineberger with Big Energy. Were involved in that process. I know Jeff was involved in many processes in South Carolina. So they represented the Water Management Group in the South Carolina, planning for the Catawba River, The water, Angel mentioned that in 2006, during Duke's relicensing, there had to be a model of the Catawba Water Basin developed. And that was the basis of kind of what we're here to talk about tonight, impacts to the water sources to get their FERC relicensing. That model predicted forecast out through 2058. Then the Supreme Court challenge got between the states got issued, and the settlement required the Catawba Water Management Group to keep that model, keep it updated every 10 years. And both states participate as well as the Water Management Group. That update from 2006 was done again in 2014. And currently the Water Management Group is updating it again. Every member along the basin provides their forecast of demands for the next 50 years to go into that model. And so Kershaw County and the other communities that are served from Wateree are included in that model. Currently, that model has to take into account that future growth. It takes into account, I think if you'll remember from this slide, the highest demand from our water reservoirs is natural. It's evaporation that occurs. And so all those things are being factored in again on this next 10-year look for the next 50 years out. And the demands for your community as well as Charlotte, as well as folks up in the Hickory area are all included in that model. And it takes into account increased temperature, so more evaporative effects. It has to consider low flow protocols, maintaining minimal levels for ecological flows, all those things. And so that's something to pay attention to. That model's been updated, but it's not yet complete. It will have to be approved by the management group, but then it will be publicly available for everybody to look to. So those were a couple of things I wanted to mention to you based upon some of your questions. I will mention on the water quality side, Charlotte, working with North Carolina and South Carolina, implemented nutrient management strategies back in the early 2000s. Our discharges from our 3 of our 4 plants in the Catawba Basin drain into the Catawba below Lake Raleigh. And so we chose to, through assistance with our permitting agencies, which South Carolina is always involved, to reduce our phosphorus loading to the Catawba. And so phosphorus is one of those key nutrients that algae likes. And so we chose to have a limit set on us so that we could reduce our footprint of nutrients in the water body, thus impacting or minimizing the impacts downstream. Lake Wateree still has nutrient challenges with algae, blue-green algae, other things. So there is a process that's going on currently that Charlotte's involved in, along with other partners up to Lake Wiley, Rock Hill, all down to Camden, Lancaster County, Chester County, are all involved in how do we help on the nutrient management strategy that's being developed by the South Carolina DHEC folks. So we're involved, we're a partner on the water quality side, as well as on the water quantity side, to figure out what makes the most sense going forward for everybody's needs, not just Charlotte's needs, but we think in the sustainability terms. We know that we can't pull more water out, so there's none available downstream to us. We have to be mindful of it because we got to be good stewards. But just like Kershaw County folks are looking out for their needs going forward, we have to for our customers in our community too.
To go off of what she asked earlier, I'm her daughter. I also missed the meeting because I no longer live in Camden. However, I do plan on moving back. I have a question based on the fact that a lot of people missed the meeting when you guys came. Is there any way that we could convince you guys to come back? That's super important to everyone in the community. I don't think anyone knows that it's going on, quite frankly.
we're already committed to go to the city council.
We're facing a huge amount of development and that we're not prepared for. Losing historical land. And we're working on that instead, and we couldn't split between the two. We're spread thin, and we're hoping that we can actually convince you guys to come back, because this is something that it does affect you guys. You guys have a lot bigger of a population, however, we're important too. And I'm not saying you guys are more important. I'm not saying we're more important. But we're human. We have to take care of each other. And is there any way that, I know you guys are busy. I know it's a lot to handle. But it would mean a lot.
Yeah, and my response is the same. We will consider it. We will not commit tonight to another meeting in Camden. We are having one in Rock Hill. And then there will be another one more upstream in the Morganton area. But the Rock Hill one is probably the closest. I'm not sure how far Rock Hill is from Camden. And that one will be before, and our goal is to have the Rock Hill meeting before the end of July. And so that gives us, because we have a public comment period where we want to make sure that we've gotten all of the comments in, and that is August the 30th. And so we want to have that Rock Hill meeting in time for folks to have ample time to provide comments. Got another question?
We have two questions online. They are being logged online, but just for the record, Linda Franklin Moore asked, what will be the Linda Franklin Moore asks, what will be the impact on economic development in SC with the IBT? We also have a comment and question from Nancy. Has the extreme variability of rain and heat been taken into account? The intense rain episodes are not ground absorbed. Lots of contemporary variations which may not have been considered in the forecast. Also, there was a settlement between Charlotte and South Carolina before the Supreme Court while I served on the Charlotte City Council. Will that settlement be negated by this proposal? Thank you, Nancy Carter, Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay, thank you for both of those comments / questions, and those are logged.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Did anyone want to make any comments? If not, we will log those and post those answers online. Okay, Rob, when to come?
Let's walk up.
Okay, come on. That's good. Okay.
So the 2010 decision from the Charlotte work that was done between South Carolina and North Carolina, what we're doing is we're following that process right now. So it highlighted and outlined that North Carolina can not just move water around without letting South Carolina know, and that there needed to be work between the two groups. And this was stage one of the 7 steps that was put into that agreement. And they are following that stage. And that's why they're here today, even though they're pulling water out of North Carolina. And the fact that they're bringing us in South Carolina and bringing this material to us to give us a chance to answer the question, to ask the questions and answer the questions, was in fact what was one of the main aspects of that decision. So.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi there, Jason Luck, Bennettsville, South Carolina. I hope these questions aren't too basic, but I have some people asking me some questions, and I need to deny myself. I'm a little bit new to this, so forgive me if I'm educating myself at your expense. The net effect of this request, is it that, sorry, the effect of this request is that there will be a net loss of water from the Catawba watershed and a net gain in the Yadkin PD watershed. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, it's the transfer.
okay. And so the water that will be transferred to the Yadkin PD watershed, this is water that will have been treated through wastewater treatment plants.
Correct.
So is that 100% of the water that will be discharged into the Yadkin PD watershed, or is there some other type of water that's going to be discharged there?
So the total amount of transfer includes both water that is treated in the wastewater treatment plant, but I would assume all of that transfer amount is discharged. Some of it's consumed. If companies make product, they bottle the water in a product they make. If they use it in cooling towers, irrigation systems that use potable water in that sub-basin across the ridge from the Catawba, that water is lost back to the Catawba. So probably 80% or more of that water, but not 100%, will be discharged to either Mallard Creek or to the Rocky River.
Okay, yeah, maybe I used the wrong term. This is my mistake. So of the water the water that does make it to the Yadkin PD watershed,
Right.
is 100% of that water that comes from a wastewater treatment facility?
The water that would be considered a transfer from Charlotte, from the Catawba to the Rocky River, would come through a wastewater treatment plant. Yes.
Okay, and did I understand you correctly to say that North Carolina does not allow you to drink that water?
North Carolina does not allow us to take basically the end of the pipe from a wastewater treatment plant that after we process it and we're fixing to discharge it to a creek, we can't turn around, run that through a water treatment facility directly and provide that to customers for potable uses. So we can't turn that into drinking water. There are stipulations about how much reuse can occur, meaning how much effluent is what we call that water discharge, how much you can blend back to raw water sources, which are natural waters that we use as source water for drinking water plants.
So how much of the water from these wastewater treatment plants we're talking about can be used for non-potable uses?
We currently provide about 2 million gallons a day in Charlotte as non-potable uses, but that system could be expanded. We just have to have customers that are willing to pay for it.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, the water being transferred from water that does make it from the Catawba River Basin to the Rocky River Basin will have gone through a wastewater treatment plant if it makes it to the other side. And that water is not potable, but is nonetheless discharged into the river, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's how the system works. And the water that we discharge is of higher quality than the stream itself.
But it's not allowed to be used for potable uses.
No, just like folks wouldn't drink creek water without it being treated. So it has natural contaminants in it that might be harmful for that.
So another, I've got one more line of questioning, and I'll leave y'all be.
Great question.
Well, the Rocky River Basin, correct me if I'm wrong, but this request for transfer is necessitated because of increased use of water in the Rocky River Basin on the other side of that ridge. Is that correct?
We expect the Charlotte system to grow across Mecklenburg County, including portions in the Rocky River that more water will be needed over the next 30 years.
So why is more water needed there?
It's growth, just like it occurs here.
Okay, is this growth taking place within the city of Charlotte?
Portions of this area is in the city of Charlotte, yes.
Okay, and is this growth taking place in any other areas in Mecklenburg and adjoining counties that are subject to zoning oversight?
Yes.
Yeah, Davidson, Huntersville, and Cornelia. So it's really, when you look at that ridge line, it's not just the city of Charlotte proper. Charlotte Water is a regional utility. So we serve the city, let me get over here to my phone. We serve the city of Charlotte and also the towns in Mecklenburg County. And so we have towns that are on, that are also, the ridge line goes through.
So to put this another way, development is necessitating this change. Charlotte's development.
Charlotte's development, just like development occurs across the basin.
Projections. So this is, we have to do a 30-year lookout. And so part of this is, where are we projected to be and how do we serve? And so that's what this process is about.
And I may have missed this. Has this process been coordinated with any of the zoning or planning authorities of the city of Charleston, gracious, city of Charlotte and the adjoining counties? Has this been coordinated with any of those authorities?
Charlotte developed a unified development ordinance that was a very public process, took a few years. It was the plan, I think it's called Viz 2040, the vision plan. And so it was developed with multitudes of stakeholders, both in the city of Charlotte as well as folks in the county and the surrounding towns.
So who oversees that plan?
City of Charlotte Planning Department,
Okay.
and it was blessed by the Charlotte City Council.
Has the city of Charlotte Planning Department had any input in this process?
They are not a party to this process. They set the development requirements for the community based upon the community's desires for what they believe the community should consist of over the next 20 years.
And you react to their needs.
That's correct.
You meet their needs, not
That's
the other
correct.
way around.
It doesn't mean wherever the development could occur that we can serve them. There are sensitive areas within our service district around our watersheds, things like that, that we won't allow development. Basically sewer to be provided. Water's a little more available across the community, but we rely on the planning folks to determine the types of development that occur. That's just how the Charlotte kind of regulations and governmental processes work. Charlotte Water is not involved in deciding if a development can occur in any particular location.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions or comments? All questions and comments are part of the record. By the way, I'm not sure whether I said that before. But it is a part of the record. Are we good? Okay, you got.
I like the question that, I asked on Teams about the drought and the expected, like what's gonna happen. We get droughts in Camden a lot. We rely on the river. What is the expectations of what happens whenever our rivers are too low? Because you guys are also going through the same thing. I mean, we get generally the same weather typically. What's the expectations of when our rivers are really low? Because you guys are needing it as well. You guys
Yeah,
are-
there is, and Ron alluded to this earlier, as being a member of the Catawba Water Remanagement Group. If there is a drought, there's a low inflow protocol. Okay, so there's a drought management plan. And so the drought itself technically could not be in Mecklenburg County, but we still will abide by the protocols because we're in partnership with everyone up and down the river. So that's how it works.
And I'm sorry, I'm also new to this. Why was Berkeley County not let in on this? Just because I do know that watering backs into Lake Marion, right?
Lady,
No?
okay, you want to get that one?
Train in Marion, yeah.
That's the Santee River Basin.
Okay, I just don't understand I'm just asking why.
Yeah, that area comes down from the Santee River Basin
Okay.
through the two lakes.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I know that Waterbury flows in as well, and that's also a heavily polluted area. Just curious if that.
So Wateree will come down to the Waccamaw.
Okay.
It will meet there just above Georgetown. In Horry County, in that area where, notified, yes.
Person in that area was at the time.
There was fish, sturgeon and striped bass in that area. Now they're endangered fish in their area. Is there any way of monitoring the impact on the fish population? I understand the question.
That sounds kind of specific.
It is, and it's done from the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and their fish and wildlife programs. They're the ones who monitor the sturgeon and the other levels, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And a lot of the monitoring that was going on had to do with flows. And during the FERC licensing projects that we had for Lake Wateree, as well as Wiley and others, the flows were considered to find out how can we help that. That also occurred to Lake Murray and others. So the low inflow protocols that we have under stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these droughts have minimum flow releases that must occur in order to help sustain both recreation and biological and fish activities. So all that was taken into consideration from what we call the impoundments, and that's Lake Wateree, which is a huge impoundment, and it has minimum releases that must occur on a daily basis, just like Lake Norman does and Lake Wiley, to help Lake Wateree keep their levels up. So all up and down those FERC licenses were all put together over, 10, 12 years worth of work with multiple federal, state, and local agencies in order, and that was in fish are one aspect of many that were taken into consideration.
That was one of their big concerns.
Okay.
The other was releasing polychlorinated phenol in the water.
And that's PCBs, which have been outlawed for many, many years, but that doesn't mean that there isn't remnant PCBs up and down all the rivers in the southeast. So in that work, so DHEC does do a lot of work with looking at what we call our fish advisory. And we do test for mercury, PCBs, as well as some other things. We have a pretty good active web service that you can look on. But those were remnants of heating exchange type fluids that were put in. Maybe Dominion Energy used to use them when they were SCE&G in their power generating machines to reduce the heat coming from that. But they are no longer used today, so they're not being discharged at any relevant amount that you would have seen many years ago. I mean, I don't know how much better I can answer that question. So.
Understood. One of the questions is someone on the lake. Currently, they're doing dam repairs on the lake, and the lake is at 95.57 feet. When they have lows of that nature, what is the process of making sure that the lake Wateree is filled back up to capacity and not having that water routed to the Yadkin base? Understand the question?
Yeah, Lake Wateree is not routed back to the Yadkin
Well,
PD.
the water that flows into Lake Wateree would be taken from the Charlotte Water Authority out of that Catawba basin and sent to another area, correct?
Okay, so each of these FERC lake systems that you have, that's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah.
Regulates the dam that you have at Lake Wiley as well as the one above it. I mean, Wateree as well as Wiley. And there are minimum water levels and water releases that have to be done. So your lakes are to be filled up during the winter time. In the summertime, we're going to see evaporation of over an inch for the entire area. So as the summer goes into August and we have these dry days like we've been having, low humidity, you're going to see your lake drop just slightly, but they try to keep it to levels above 95, or right at 95,
It's 97.
yeah, so stage one is at 94, so when it gets below 94, then that ends up being our stage one. They lowered that for a couple reasons, including repairs, and that was done by, who owns it, Dominion? That's the Duke Energy.
That's Duke.
Okay, so Duke did that so that they could work on the dam, but that will be moved up to normal flow, is what it should be. In fact, I thought it was getting to there now, is it not back up? Okay. Well, foot low at this time of the year is probably about normal based on the heat that we have had. That would not surprise me a bit. And you guys who've lived on that lake many years will see it as these hot, dry summer days come. It will start to get a little bit low until we get these afternoon thunder showers, which we hope will start very soon, because my yard needs it really bad.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Final reminder, charlottewateribt.org is the one resource and page we want everyone to go to, and all updates will be posted there. I want to thank you all for attending. We do have one thing in common, and it is water. And so we definitely appreciate everyone's perspective here, and everyone have a safe drive home. Meeting was adjourned. Thank you.